The tall glass towers of Sanctum Prime shook like leaves in a storm as another massive enemy ship appeared from nowhere. The alien city had never seen anything like this before. Council Speaker Veltar pressed his face against the huge window of his office, watching in horror as his planet's defense systems fell apart one by one. The Void Swarm had arrived, and they were hungry. Veltar had 4 arms instead of 2 like humans, and all of them were shaking now. He had been the leader of his people for over 50 years, but nothing had prepared him for this moment. The enemy ships looked like giant black insects, each one the size of a small moon. They moved through space like sharks through water, destroying everything in their path. "Speaker," his assistant said quietly, trying not to panic. "The defense grid is failing. Our ships can't even scratch their armor." Veltar closed his eyes for a moment. When he was young, his grandfather had told him stories about monsters that lived in the dark between stars. He had always thought they were just stories meant to scare children. Now those monsters were real, and they were eating his world alive. "How many star systems have they destroyed so far?" Veltar asked, even though he was afraid to hear the answer. His assistant checked the reports coming in from across the galaxy. 47 systems completely gone, Speaker. The hegemony worlds fell yesterday. The trading consortium put up a fight, but it only lasted 6 hours. 47 systems. Billions and billions of people, all different alien species, all dead now. Veltar felt sick to his stomach. The Void Swarm didn't just kill people, they ate everything. Planets, moons, even the stars themselves. They left nothing behind but empty space. "Sir, we're getting reports that they've started eating the outer planets of our system too," another aide whispered. "Jupiter-sized worlds, just, gone." Veltar knew what he had to do, even though it went against everything his people believed in. The Galactic Council had always been peaceful. They solved problems with words, not weapons. But words couldn't stop the swarm. With trembling hands, he activated the emergency communication system. This was something that hadn't been used in over 200 years. Red lights flashed throughout the building as every alien in the galaxy would receive his message. "Send out the distress call on every frequency we have," he ordered. "Tell them we'll give them anything they want, our best technology, rare resources, entire star systems. Someone out there has to help us." The message shot out through space faster than light, reaching every corner of the known galaxy. Most civilizations were already running or hiding. Some had tried to fight and lost everything. Others had simply surrendered and been eaten alive. But the message traveled farther than Veltar had planned. Far away, in a part of space that most aliens tried to forget about, the signal reached a small blue and green planet. This world was surrounded by warning signs and quarantine markers. Every ship that passed by was told to stay away. The creatures that lived there were considered too dangerous to be part of galactic society. Admiral Jack Morrison was drinking coffee in the command center of Terra Station when the alien message came through. He was a big man with gray hair and scars on his hands from years of fighting. The space station orbited Earth's moon, watching for any threats to humanity. The translation computer worked hard to understand the alien language. The words came through broken and strange, but the meaning was crystal clear. Entire species were being wiped out. Planets were being eaten. Someone was begging for help. "Sir," Lieutenant Kelly Brooks walked up to him. She was young and nervous, new to the job. "Command Headquarters says we should ignore this message. The aliens put us in quarantine for a reason. They said we're too violent to be trusted." Morrison looked at the tactical display showing where the Void Swarm was moving. He could see the pattern. They were eating everything in their path like a plague of space locusts. Soon they would reach the core worlds where trillions of aliens lived. "Yeah, they said we were too dangerous," Morrison said slowly. "But right now, it looks like they need some dangerous people." He turned to his communications officer. "Contact Fleet Command. Tell Admiral Rodriguez and Admiral Thompson to prep their fleets. We're going to war. The young lieutenant looked worried. Sir, are you sure about this? We've been isolated for 50 years. Maybe there's a good reason the galaxy doesn't want us involved. Morrison stood up and looked out at Earth below them. Down there were 8 billion humans who had been told they weren't good enough for galactic society. They had been called monsters, savages, and worse. But now those same aliens who had rejected them were about to be extinct. Kelly, he said quietly, sometimes being dangerous is exactly what the situation calls for. Those aliens are about to learn why evolution made humans the way we are. Within hours, every human military base in the solar system was buzzing with activity. Ships that had been in storage for decades were being pulled out and armed. Soldiers who had never expected to fight aliens were loading weapons and preparing for the unknown. The message was simple and spread quickly through human space: innocent people were dying, and they had asked for help. For the first time in 50 years, humanity was going to remind the galaxy what they were capable of. The quarantine was about to be broken, and the universe would never be the same again. 3 days had passed since Veltar sent out his desperate message, and he was starting to lose hope. The Void Swarm ships kept coming, turning his beautiful city into rubble. Then something incredible happened. Space itself seemed to twist and bend, and suddenly ships began appearing above his world. Veltar rushed to his observation deck and counted them quickly. Nearly 200 vessels of different shapes and sizes. His heart jumped with joy for the first time in weeks. Someone had actually answered their call for help. But as he looked closer, his excitement turned to confusion. These ships looked nothing like the sleek, elegant vessels that other galactic civilizations used. They were boxy and rough, like someone had built them in a hurry. Every single one was covered in weapons, big guns, missile tubes, and things he couldn't even identify. Speaker, his military advisor General Crix whispered next to him, "These ships look very old-fashioned. Almost primitive. But look at all those weapons. I've never seen anything armed this heavily." The ships moved into battle formation with military precision. Veltar noticed they didn't use the standard galactic communication protocols. Instead, they spoke in a harsh, aggressive language that his translators struggled to understand. That's when Veltar realized who had come to help them. These were the quarantined species from the Sol system. The dangerous ones. The humans. Captain Mike Torres stood on the bridge of his battleship called the Relentless. He was a tough-looking man with several scars on his face from previous battles. His crew was made up of volunteers who had been waiting their whole lives for a real fight. "All right, people," Torres announced over the ship's communication system, "we've got alien civilians down there counting on us. These swarm things have been bullying the galaxy for who knows how long. Time to show them what happens when they pick on someone smaller." His weapons officer grinned. "Sir, should we try to communicate with them first? You know, give them a chance to surrender." Torres laughed. Did they give those 47 civilizations a chance to surrender? I don't think so. All ships, weapons free. If it looks like a bug and fights like a bug, kill it like a bug. The human fleet moved forward like a pack of wolves. The swarm vessels had been designed to fight against the Council's advanced energy weapons, elegant beams of light that could cut through armor. They were not prepared for what the humans brought to the fight. Human weapons were crude but devastating. Instead of energy beams, they fired massive chunks of metal at incredible speeds. Nuclear-tipped missiles exploded like tiny suns, tearing holes in swarm ships the size of city blocks. The aliens had never seen warfare like this. But what shocked Veltar most was how the humans fought. When one of their ships took damage, instead of retreating like any sane species would do, they accelerated toward the enemy. Damaged human vessels rammed directly into swarm fighters, exploding in brilliant fireballs. Did they just crash their ship on purpose? General Crix asked in disbelief. Over the radio, they could hear human voices cheering and laughing as they rode their burning ships into certain death. It was like they were enjoying themselves. One human ship exploded near Veltar's observation deck, and he watched in amazement as armored figures floated out into the vacuum of space. Their suits were torn and leaking air, but they kept fighting with handheld weapons. One soldier, completely cut off from his ship, grabbed onto a passing swarm fighter with his bare hands and began beating it with his rifle like a club. "They're fighting in space without ships," Veltar whispered. "They're fighting in the vacuum with nothing but small weapons." The human soldier and the swarm fighter both disappeared in a nuclear explosion a few seconds later. Instead of mourning their lost comrade, the other humans became even more aggressive. What terrified Veltar most was that this insane strategy was actually working. The Void Swarm, which had never retreated in thousands of years, was falling back. Their ships were turning around and fleeing from the human assault. "I don't understand," General Crick said, checking his instruments again and again. "The swarm has superior technology, more ships, better armor. How are these primitive humans winning?" Veltar watched another human ship ram into a swarm dreadnought twice its size, both vessels exploding in a ball of fire. "Because they're not trying to win, General. They're trying to make the enemy lose, even if it costs them everything." The battle raged for 6 hours. When it was over, half the human ships were destroyed or badly damaged. But every single swarm vessel was either dead in space or running away as fast as they could. "Speaker," his aide reported with trembling voice, "the swarm is retreating. For the first time in recorded history, they're actually running away." Veltar felt relief wash over him, followed immediately by a new kind of fear. "What about the humans?" "Sir, they're chasing them. All of them. Even the damaged ships are trying to pursue the swarm." Veltar realized what they had done. They had asked for help from the most violent species in the galaxy, and now those same creatures were loose in space with a taste for battle. The swarm was running, but Veltar wondered if they had simply traded one monster for another. The humans had saved them, but at what cost? General Lisa Parker stood on the bridge of her massive aircraft carrier called the Washington, watching through the huge windows as space around them filled with more and more ships. Every few minutes, bright flashes of light announced new arrivals coming through hyperspace jumps. But these weren't just military vessels. She could see corporate company logos, mining equipment, and even pirate skull and crossbone symbols painted on the hulls. "General," her assistant Lieutenant David Chen walked up with a tablet full of reports, "we're getting reinforcements from everywhere. I've never seen anything like this." Parker looked at the growing fleet with amazement. "Tell me what we've got, David." "Well, ma'am, the Martian Defense Force sent their entire battle group. The asteroid belt miners have converted their industrial ships into weapons platforms. Even the Outer Rim pirates have stopped fighting each other and joined our fleet. They're all flying together like they're best friends now." Parker shook her head in wonder. Humans had been fighting each other for centuries over territory, resources, and politics. But the moment an outside threat appeared, every single group had dropped their conflicts to work together. It was like watching a family that argued constantly suddenly unite when a stranger threatened one of their children. She watched as an old, beat-up cargo ship covered in mining equipment slowly moved into formation next to a shiny new corporate battleship worth billions of credits. The cargo ship looked like it had been through 100 asteroid storms, while the corporate ship looked like it had just rolled off the assembly line. But both crews were talking to each other over the radio like old friends, sharing targeting information and battle plans. "How many ships do we have total now?" Parker asked. David checked his numbers again, hardly believing them himself. 8,000 ships and still growing, General. We're getting about 50 new arrivals every hour. 8,000 ships. Parker had been in the military for 30 years, and she had never seen a human fleet this large. During the worst civil wars in human history, the biggest fleets had maybe 1,000 ships. But now, facing an alien threat, humans from across the solar system and beyond were volunteering faster than they could count them. Meanwhile, on the alien world of Sanctum Prime, Council Speaker Veltar was receiving reports that made his blood run cold. His military observers were watching the human reinforcements arrive, and what they saw didn't make sense according to everything they knew about warfare. Speaker, General Crix reported, looking very disturbed, these aren't professional soldiers joining the human fleet. Most of them are civilians, regular people with no military training. Veltar leaned forward in his chair. What do you mean? I mean families are selling their homes and businesses to buy weapons for their personal spacecraft. Parents are converting their children's school transport ships into fighters. We've intercepted communications showing teenagers lying about their ages to join combat units. It's like their entire species has decided to go to war. This was completely alien to Veltar's understanding. In galactic civilization, wars were fought by professional military forces while civilians stayed safe at home. The idea of entire families volunteering for combat was horrifying. Surely their government is trying to stop this chaos? Veltar asked. General Crix checked his reports again. No sir, quite the opposite. Their leaders are encouraging it. We intercepted a message from their president telling citizens that freedom isn't free and asking for volunteers to show the galaxy what humans are made of. The reports got stranger. Human civilians were retrofitting garbage trucks with missile launchers. Space taxi drivers were forming squadron attack groups. Even human teenagers were hacking into military databases to volunteer for the most dangerous missions. They fight like they're having fun, the general continued. When their ships get damaged, instead of retreating for repairs, they speed up and ram into enemy vessels. When they run out of bullets and missiles, they use their ships themselves as weapons. And when their ships explode, the survivors try to board enemy vessels and keep fighting with hand weapons. Veltar felt sick. Don't they care about dying? They do care, Speaker, but not the way we do. When humans die in battle, their friends don't get scared and run away. Instead, they get angry and fight twice as hard. We've watched them hold funeral ceremonies between battles, and afterwards they're even more violent than before. This was the opposite of everything the Galactic Council understood about psychology and warfare. When most species took casualties, their morale dropped and they became more likely to surrender. The Void Swarm had conquered dozens of civilizations by simply killing enough of their people that the survivors lost hope. But humans seemed to work backwards. Every loss made them stronger. Every fallen comrade made them more determined. The Swarm's psychological warfare tactics, perfected over thousands of years, were completely useless against a species that got motivated by tragedy. General, Veltar asked quietly, in your professional opinion, what kind of species are we dealing with? General Crix was silent for a long moment, watching the tactical display show more human ships arriving. Speaker, I think we've made contact with a species that evolved by surviving on the most dangerous planet in the galaxy. They don't just fight to win, they fight because they enjoy the challenge. And they're very, very good at it. Outside in space, the human fleet continued to grow. Farmers, factory workers, shop owners, and school teachers had all become warriors overnight. They came from different planets, different social classes, and different political groups. But they all shared one thing in common: someone had threatened innocent people, and humans don't tolerate bullies. The pack was gathering, and they were hungry for a fight. The Void Swarm had a single, massive brain that controlled millions of ships across the galaxy. This hive mind had been alive for over 10,000 years, and in all that time, it had never failed to conquer its prey. It understood how other species worked: when you killed enough of them, they got scared and gave up. When you destroyed their cities, they begged for mercy. When you showed them how hopeless their situation was, they surrendered. But these humans made no sense at all. The hive mind tried to analyze the data from its battles. Every other species in the galaxy followed predictable patterns. Fight for a while, take some losses, then either run away or surrender when things got bad. Simple. Logical. Easy to exploit. Humans did the exact opposite. The more ships they lost, the angrier they got. The more friends that died, the harder they fought. When their situation became hopeless, they seemed to get excited about it. It was like they had evolved backwards from every other intelligent species in the universe. Commander Rick Davis was leading his strike force through what used to be a swarm supply base. His ship, the Thunderbolt, looked like it had been through a meat grinder. The hull was covered in blast marks and laser burns from a dozen different battles. Half his crew was running on energy drinks and pure stubbornness, but they were still eager for another fight. "All right, people," Davis announced over the radio, "intelligence says there's a big command ship hiding behind that asteroid. Let's go introduce ourselves." His weapons officer, a tough woman named Captain Rodriguez, grinned as she locked onto targets. "Sir, should we try to capture it intact for study?" Davis laughed. "Rodriguez, when has any human ever done anything the easy way? Johnson, take your boarding team and capture that command ship. Williams, I want you to ram your fighter into their engine section. Everyone else, hit them with everything we've got." The human attack was pure chaos, but it was organized chaos. While some ships provided covering fire, others launched boarding parties directly into enemy vessels. The swarm had never encountered tactics like this because no sane species would risk their soldiers' lives so casually. Sergeant Ben Johnson led his squad through the corridors of the captured swarm ship. These passages were built for insect-like creatures, so the humans had to crawl on their hands and knees in some places. But Johnson's team kept moving forward, fighting room by room. When Johnson ran out of ammunition for his rifle, he pulled out a combat knife. When the knife blade broke off in an enemy's armor, he started using his bare hands and boots. His squad followed his example, fighting like wild animals backed into a corner. "Commander," Johnson's voice crackled over the radio, "we've taken their command center. The whole ship is shutting down. I think we scared them so bad they can't even think straight anymore." This was the moment when the hive mind felt something it had never experienced before: fear. Not just concern or caution, but actual terror. These humans didn't fight for logical reasons like territory or resources. They seemed to fight because they enjoyed it. Like predators that hunted for sport rather than food. Even worse, they were learning incredibly fast. Each battle taught them new tricks, and they shared this knowledge instantly across their entire fleet. The hive mind had taken thousands of years to perfect its tactics, but humans were improving their strategies in real time during actual combat. The most terrifying realization was that humans got stronger when things got worse. Other species became demoralized by casualties, but humans used their anger as fuel. They turned their grief into rage, and their rage into devastating military effectiveness. For the first time in its long existence, the hive mind made a decision based on fear rather than hunger. The order went out to every swarm ship in the galaxy: retreat to the outer rim of space and avoid all contact with the human species. The monsters that had terrorized civilizations for millennia were running away from a single planet's worth of angry primates. Admiral Jack Morrison was coordinating the human pursuit from his flagship when he received an urgent communication from the Galactic Council. The alien leader Veltar appeared on his screen, looking desperate and frightened. "Admiral Morrison," Veltar pleaded, "you've accomplished the impossible. The swarm is fleeing our space for the first time in recorded history. Surely your people can return to your home system now. The threat is over." Morrison looked at his tactical display, which showed human fleets spread across dozens of star systems. His people were having the time of their lives, finally getting to use all those weapons they'd been building for decades. They were exploring new worlds, meeting alien civilizations, and most importantly, they were winning. "I'm afraid that's not how this works, Speaker," Morrison replied calmly. "We came out here to help you folks deal with the swarm. But now that we're here, it seems to me you need help with a lot more than just giant space bugs." Veltar's expression showed pure panic. "What do you mean?" Morrison smiled the kind of smile that had once made corporate executives reconsider hostile takeovers. "Well, for starters, your trade routes are completely undefended. Pirates have been having a field day out here. Your colonies don't have proper emergency response systems. And from what I can see, most of your military is designed for show rather than actual fighting. The truth was sinking in for Veltar. The humans hadn't just defeated the swarm, they had tasted galactic civilization and decided they liked it. After 50 years of being quarantined in their little corner of space, they were finally free to explore and expand. And they had no intention of going back to their cage. Don't worry, Speaker, Morrison continued. We're here to help. Whether you want us to or not. The age of human expansion had begun, and the galaxy would never be the same. 6 months had passed since the last Void Swarm ship disappeared into the dark space beyond the galaxy's edge. The nightmare that had haunted alien civilizations for thousands of years was finally over. But for the Galactic Council, a new kind of nightmare was just beginning. Ambassador Helen Foster walked into what used to be the Council's most sacred meeting room. The aliens had always kept this place pristine and formal, with floating platforms designed for different species and energy barriers to keep everyone separated by race. Now the room looked completely different. The humans had remodeled everything. They had installed normal chairs and tables where everyone could sit together. They had removed all the species purity barriers that kept different aliens apart. Most shocking of all, they had hung human flags alongside alien banners, as if they belonged there. Helen Foster was a middle-aged woman with gray hair and sharp eyes who had spent 20 years negotiating corporate deals on Earth. She was tough as nails and twice as smart as most people in the room. She sat down across from Council Speaker Veltar like she owned the place. Ambassador Foster, Veltar began nervously, his 4 arms fidgeting, we want to thank you again for your assistance with the swarm crisis. But surely now that the threat is over, your people can return to your home system. Your presence here was only supposed to be temporary. Foster smiled, but it wasn't a friendly smile. It was the kind of smile that had once made billion credit corporations back down from fights they couldn't win. Speaker, you called us for help, and we gave it to you. But now that we're here, we've had a chance to look around. And honestly, we think you folks have been running this galaxy all wrong. She pressed a button on her tablet, and a holographic display filled the air above the table. It showed dozens of star systems with little human flags scattered throughout them. New colonies, trading posts, and military bases were sprouting up everywhere. What is the meaning of this? Squeaked another council member, a bird-like alien named Counselor Zeep. These are violations of our territorial agreements. Your territorial agreements, Foster replied calmly, were based on the idea that you could actually defend your territory. Turns out you couldn't. We can. She zoomed in on the trade route displays. Look at these numbers. Trade is up 300% since we started patrolling the shipping lanes. Piracy is down 90%. Travel times have been cut in half because ships don't have to take long detours to avoid dangerous areas. Veltar looked at the numbers with growing dismay. It was true, human protection had made galactic commerce more profitable than it had been in centuries. But it had also made the Council irrelevant. Your peaceful approach to running the galaxy, Foster continued, only worked because nobody really dangerous had shown up yet. The moment the swarm arrived, your whole civilization nearly got eaten. If we hadn't been here, you'd all be dead right now. Another council member, a slug-like creature, spoke up angrily. But the quarantine protocols. Your species was deemed too violent and unpredictable for galactic society. There were good reasons for keeping you isolated. Foster laughed out loud. Yeah, you thought we were too dangerous. Turns out, dangerous is exactly what you needed. The swarm is gone. Pirates are running scared. And for the first time in centuries, nobody in this galaxy has to worry about being conquered by their neighbors. She stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the space lanes where human patrol ships flew alongside grateful alien vessels. You want to know the truth? Your civilized approach to everything was just weakness disguised as morality. You let bullies run wild because fighting back was beneath you. You let entire species get enslaved because war was too messy for your refined sensibilities. The room fell silent. Every alien in the chamber knew she was right, but none of them wanted to admit it. Foster turned back to face them, her expression becoming deadly serious. Here's how things are going to work from now on. Humans are full citizens of this galaxy now, not guests or refugees or temporary helpers. We're here to stay, and we're going to protect this place like we protect our own homes. But what if we don't agree to this? Veltar asked quietly. Then you're welcome to try to make us leave, Foster replied with a shrug. But I should warn you, we're the same species that just chased the most feared predators in galactic history completely out of known space. We did that as a favor to you. Imagine what we'd do if you actually made us angry. The threat hung in the air like a thundercloud. Everyone in the room knew the humans weren't bluffing. They had seen what happened to the Void Swarm. Look, Foster said, her tone softening slightly, we're not here to conquer you or rule over you. We're here to be your neighbors and your partners. But we're also here to make sure nobody ever threatens innocent people again. Sometimes the monsters under the bed are exactly what you need when something worse comes knocking. Outside the council chambers, the new reality of galactic life was already taking shape. Human cargo ships worked alongside alien freighters. Human military vessels escorted council diplomatic missions. Human families were setting up homes on alien worlds while alien students attended universities on human colonies. The galaxy had learned a hard lesson about survival. Sometimes salvation comes with teeth, and it doesn't politely leave when the job is done. The council had made their choice when they called for help, and now everyone would live with the consequences. The age of human expansion had begun not through conquest or invasion, but through a desperate alien plea for assistance. The quarantine was broken forever, and the universe would never be the same again.